everyone. So today's video is going to be so much fun for some of you because I decided that I'm going to talk about my wedding planning experience, and I'm going to start a new series called the Wedding Belle series. And in this series, I'm just going to be kind of giving some tips and tricks or advice in terms of wedding planning from someone's perspective who does not have a wedding planner. Keep in mind, I'm also a very, very busy person. So anyone else who is out there who's extremely busy and just can't afford to do the planner, this video series is definitely going to be for you because I've learned so much about this entire process and just different tips and tricks on how to make it easier, even whenever you're living a very busy lifestyle. For example, I am a graduate student and I also have basically a full-time internship load, and I make YouTube videos. So it's been very difficult, and plus my wedding is actually a destination wedding. So all of the planning that I have been doing here in Georgia is actually going to be taking place in Florida. So I feel like I've honestly become kind of a pro at this whole planning situation, and I just really wanted to, give you guys some advice if you want it. So if you're curious to find out what I have to say about wedding planning, then just keep watching. So the very first thing that I want to say about planning your own wedding is the thing that's helped me the most is just being organized. And so this has literally become my Bible. You guys can probably see how thick it is. This is the Bride's Essential Wedding Planner. It's the deluxe edition. I think this one's by Amy Nebbins. I'm not really sure. My future mother-in-law got it for me at Barnes & Noble. This was literally purchased probably a week or 2 weeks after I got engaged. And so what I really love about this, I will open it up for you guys, is that it has a whole bunch of different tabs. Woo, oh my gosh, this thing's heavy. Over here. Okay, so let me see if I can function first. So it has the ceremony, reception, stationery, fashion and beauty, music and flowers, and then it has photography and videography, hotels and transportation, parties, gifts, and more, and then honeymoon and beyond. So it has a whole bunch of different tabs, and within the tabs, it has different like tips and stuff like that. So for example, the ceremony, it'll give you kind of the scoop on what a ceremony is supposed to entail, depending on like societal norms and stuff like that. But honestly, it's your wedding, so however you want to do it, if you want to climb, through the Appalachian Mountains, then do you, boo, right? But this is just kind of the gist of what most people will do for their weddings. And then this one also has like a to-do list over here for the ceremony specifically. And then it goes into money saving tips over here, advice at a glance, and then it goes into the site. Another thing that I love about these little books is that while you're going shopping, like for your sites or your different vendors, it has a whole bunch of questions on the side right here that you should ask your vendors. And it's things that, like, when I first got engaged, I honestly didn't know what I was doing. And so all of the little questions that come in these types of books, really, like, I would never think to ask some of the questions. For example, like one of the ceremony reception or the ceremony questions is like, can we hire an outside musician to play at the ceremony? Can other musicians be brought in? Is photography or videography permitted in the room? There's just a whole bunch of different stipulations that some venues just won't allow. So these are all really good questions to ask. And it has basically the same format throughout the entire book. So what you see in the ceremony area will also be throughout for like the reception and stuff like that. And so I probably spent about a month just reading through this book to kind of get the gist of what wedding planning is like. And some things are extremely detailed. So if you're one of those people who just becomes like very over organized and wants like every single little thing for the wedding, like this book is literally going to have it for you. And so that's just something to keep in mind. Like I said, it answers like literally every single question that I could ever have about a wedding and the planning process. So I really, really love that. So I just, honestly, you guys, like, this book is just so amazing. There were a couple other books there. I think the Knot had one, which is a really big wedding planner thing. I actually have my wedding website through the Knot. But another thing that I love about this book specifically, I'll show it to you guys really quick, but it gives you a planning timeline. So this is going to work for people who have a year or at least a year of planning. If you are on like a more condensed schedule, then you're just gonna have to kind of create your own schedule based on this. But basically it shows you like 9 months before or earlier what you're going to do, what different things you need to be thinking about in order to make the planning process smooth. Because keep in mind, like, vendors get booked up so quickly, and if you like find, for example, like a catering service or a DJ that you just absolutely love, like you saw them at a friend's wedding or something like that, and you really want them for your wedding, it's something that you need to be really conscious of, because they might have already booked your date. So that's why I love this timeline, is that it just really keeps things nice and organized for you. So I highly recommend getting one of these books if you are planning your own wedding and you don't have a wedding planner. And even if you do have a wedding planner, I would still highly recommend you getting one of these books, just because it'll help you stay organized if your wedding planner doesn't like give you a lot of the information. This will definitely help you like know what questions to ask, so you don't feel naive going into different meetings with the vendors. So the next thing that I wanted to do for you guys is kind of give you like the first 5 things that you should do whenever you are starting to plan your wedding by yourself. All right, so the very first step that you're going to want to do is talk to your fiance about the guest list and kind of what that means for you guys. So are you wanting to have a very small and intimate wedding with only like 25 people, or with only family members? Are you wanting to have a really large wedding where you invite all of your like first and second cousins and all of your friends, your, you know, fellow employees at work and things like that? Like, what kind of wedding are you wanting to have? And it's something that, you know, obviously you should compromise with your fiance if you guys have differences and views and things like that. I can promise you that you want to make the wedding planning process as smooth as possible. So, you know, if you have your second cousin that you only see like once every year or 2 years, and your fiance wants to have it a little bit smaller, I just recommend trying not to get too wrapped up in, you know, little things like that. So yes, definitely talk with your fiance regarding what kind of wedding you guys want to have whenever you're talking about the guest list. And once you have decided on that with your fiance, what I would highly recommend is staying super strict with that. So for example, if you start out saying, okay, you know, I just want to have like 50 people there. I want my family, your family, and, you know, our very closest friends. And so for us, that would be about like 50 people, right? And then, you know, further down the road, you're like meeting new people, or, you know, you don't want to hurt feelings or anything like that. So you just start to, you know, invite more and more people. You add more people to your guest list. I highly recommend not doing that. Just stay really strict to your guest list, because as time goes on, you're going to be talking to your different vendors regarding how many people are going to be at your wedding, and certain vendors can only accommodate certain number of people. And so if you fall in love with a catering service or a cake service or something like that, and you tell them, hey, you know, we're probably inviting like 50 to 80 people, and then all of a sudden closer to the wedding you're up to 100 people, that's just going to make it very difficult between you and your vendor. And so I highly recommend just staying super strict, and keep in mind that this is your wedding, you guys. So whether it be your money that you're spending or your family's money that you're spending, every single person is going to cost about $30 to $50 a head. And so even if you were to have like a barbecue style or anything like that, and it's just a really small intimate gathering, it's still going to be about $30 a person, because you're going to have all of the food. If you're serving any type of alcoholic beverage, that's going to add up as well. And so I just highly recommend, once you have your guest list style in mind, just really try to keep it within that range. And then obviously you want to account for about I would probably say about 10 people, more or less. So if you end up coming across someone who, you know, if you're planning your wedding about a year out and then you come across someone who becomes one of your really, really close friends, or, you know, some loved ones end up having relationships with other people, just different things like that, you want to kind of give yourself a little bit of wiggle room in terms of the guest list. So that is tip number 1. All right, so the second tip that I have for you guys is to talk about your budget. So this is also going to go hand in hand with your guest list. So if you have a smaller budget and a guest list is something that you're willing to have a little bit of wiggle room on, then these two things are going to go hand in hand. But you want to talk about budget either between you and your fiance, or if you're having different family members contributing to the budget as well, you're going to want to talk to your parents, grandparents, aunts and uncles, whoever is going to be helping out with the wedding expenses. So luckily my fiance and I had a lot of help from both his side of the family and my side of the family. So we kind of delegated different things. For example, his parents ended up giving us a cash amount, and so we were able to do what we wanted with that money. And then, sorry, I'm talking way too much for my throat to be able to handle this. But my family, or my side of the family, my grandmother ended up paying for the venue, and then my parents are paying for my dress and just a couple of other things, like for me to get my hair and makeup done and different things that will be, you know, happening closer to the wedding. So with my side of the family, we kind of knew what we were getting into, and we talked with my grandmother and my parents regarding, okay, how much are you willing to spend for our venue and how much are you willing to spend for my dress? And so we got a really hard number for both of those things. And then that way, whenever my fiance and I decided to start looking at venue, and whenever I decided to pick out my dress, we kind of knew exactly what to expect, and we knew where to stay within our budget. And then in terms of his family, what they were able to do for us, we took that money and we have it on the knot.com. They have a budget calculator, which is awesome. I will have that link down below for you guys. You just type in the knot budget and they will literally, like, it's so amazing. You can plan every single thing out. If you have a set budget of like $5,000 or $10,000, you can put that in, and every single time you know, have a vendor or something like that, you can put in how much that vendor costs, and then it'll reduce the price for you in terms of how much money you have left over. So with the money that his parents were able to give to us, we decided we wanted to pay for the photographer, the catering service, the DJ, and the cake service. So we were able to kind of delegate, all right, you know, we really, really want good food and we really, really want good pictures. And so we knew that those two things were going to be a little bit more pricey for us. And then we decided, okay, the cake we also want really good because that kind of goes into the food category. And DJ, you know, we want good music, but we don't need someone super famous, and we didn't want to go with a band as well. We knew that we wanted to go with a DJ. So we were able to kind of delegate and see, all right, these are the things that we wanted to spend more money on, and these are the things that we, you know, have a little bit more wiggle room on. That's another thing regarding the budget. Unless you are really, really loaded, it's going to be difficult in terms of, you know, just making every single thing perfect and every single thing exactly the way you want it. So what I recommend is picking your top 2 or 3 things that you need to be really, really good. And like I said before, for us, I really wanted a beautiful venue, and he and I both wanted really great food, because we've been to weddings before where the food just, like, I mean, let's be honest, we had to go get like fast food afterwards. So we really wanted a good food and good cake, and we also wanted pictures that were just going to be absolutely gorgeous and last us a lifetime. So that is what I have to say about tip number 2, staying in your budget. All right, so step number 3 is going to be picking your date. And for some of you, this may be really simple and easy. It might be a date that has a lot of meaning or significance to you. For us, we're both graduate students. All of our friends are in graduate school. And so we needed to do it at a time where we knew that, first off, our family could attend without a lot of difficulty, and also that our friends could attend without a lot of difficulty. So we decided to have ours in December during the winter vacation that a lot of students have. And we also chose this because a lot of our family members tend to take off around Christmas time. And so since we're having the wedding in Florida, a lot of our family who lives out of town is actually just going to kind of turn it into a Florida vacation, Florida winter vacation. And they're going to stay for a couple of days after the wedding and then go back home before Christmas. So that's why we decided to have ours in December. Just keep in mind that if you're doing your wedding somewhere tropical, or if you're having it somewhere that's really hot, just really keep in mind, when you're going to have that, because unless you're having an indoor wedding completely, like the ceremony and the reception is indoors, people are going to be really hot. Your men are going to be in either suits or tux, unless you're doing more casual. Wedding dresses are really heavy. I never really realized that, but it is literally, my wedding dress is probably about 45 pounds, not even kidding you. And mine's not even, as heavy as a lot of the dresses out there. So all of those things are just something to keep in mind whenever you're planning the wedding. You don't want your guests to be extremely uncomfortable. And then of course your ceremony time will play into all of that as well. If you're going to have a really long ceremony time, you just want to make sure that your guests are comfortable throughout the entire process. And also keep in mind, for holidays and blackout dates and stuff like that, a lot of vendors, specifically floral vendors, are going to be really busy during the holiday season. So I lucked out because I got my floral vendor very early. And so even though I'm having my wedding the weekend before Christmas, she was still able to lock me in on that date. So it's just something to keep in mind if you're wanting to have like a holiday wedding or something like that. So that is tip number 3. All right, so the 4th tip that I have for you guys is working on picking out your venue. And this is really important because this is also going to tie back into your guest list. Some venues can only accommodate about 50 people if you're having it in like a small garden or something like that. And then other vendors, if you have it in like a giant ballroom and you're only inviting about 25 to 50 people, it's just going to make the space feel very overwhelming and that the guests aren't really filling in the space. So it's just something to keep in mind whenever you are looking at your different vendors. Again, you're going to want to go buy your little wedding Bible because it will have all of the questions that you need to ask in regards to your venue. Like, do you allow alcohol on the premises? Do they do the setup and tear down of tables and chairs for you? Do they have different vendors where they can rent out tables and chairs, or do you have to get a completely separate vendor for that? There's just a lot of different questions that go into getting your venue. You also need to look at, for my venue, there's like a giant ballroom, and then outside, right behind where the little ballroom is, there is like this giant concert outside area. It's a little park. And so I keep saying giant and then little, but you know what I'm saying. So the Saturday right before the wedding, they're actually having this huge like Christmas time festival concert thing. And so we were going to have the wedding on Saturday, but then with that going on outside, it would actually be really hard for the guests and everyone to enjoy the DJ. So that's just something else to keep in mind. Like, do they allow other events going on at the same time? There's just so many different questions that you need to ask your vendor. Do you need to have a liquor license, or do you have to have a licensed bartender? There's just a whole bunch of different questions that go into asking about the venue. And again, you can find all of those questions in the different bridal books that you can purchase at like Barnes & Noble or Books A Million. Another thing in picking out your venue, you want to think about the surroundings. So a lot of times, photographers now are just becoming so much more creative. And so if you're not wanting to do just the formal pictures, if you're wanting to have something a little more creative, you also want to think about, okay, what are going to be some really awesome backgrounds for some different shots after the ceremony or before the ceremony, depending on how you're having the wedding. And so those are just things that you want to keep in mind. And whenever you're walking down the aisle, are there going to be things that are behind you that you don't want the photographer to get? That actually ended up happening with my venue. We had to think about how we were going to decorate the background area as me walking down the aisle, because whenever our photographer ends up getting me walking down the aisle, what are they going to see in the background? Cars? No, that's not okay with me. So we just had to kind of be a little bit creative and think of some different ways to accommodate that. And yeah. So that is what I have for you guys in picking out your venue. Alrighty, so the last tip that I have for you guys is, after all of this is done or in the midst of it all, you really want to start thinking about your decor or about your theme, whatever you want to go with. If you're having a beach wedding, are you wanting like seashells everywhere, or are you having more of like a southern chic wedding, elegant wedding? Like, what kind of style are you going for? And this is when Pinterest becomes really addicting, but super, super fun, because there is just so much out there in the world of Pinterest whenever it comes to wedding decor. And if you are planning your wedding by yourself, or even if you're not and you just want to save some money, I highly recommend looking up DIY wedding decor. And this is really fun. At least I think it's really fun, because it kind of helps the wedding party come together. I know for my fiance and I, we're going to have our wedding party come together a couple of weeks before the wedding, and our family members are going to be down there with us as well. And so we're just going to have like a decor making party basically. And I don't know, I just think that's a really fun idea. Some people probably think I'm crazy for wanting to do that a couple of weeks before my wedding, but I just really enjoy those things. So that's the plan for me. And what ended up happening for me in regards to the decor, since there is so much out there, initially I thought I wanted one thing. Before I was even engaged, I kind of had this idea of wanting like a shabby chic sort of wedding, with cute little mason jars and, like lace and just a whole bunch of really girly stuff. But then I went on Pinterest and I saw this do-it-yourself orchid centerpiece, where you put orchids in a glass vase, and then you put water in them, and then you put a bit of cute lights down at the bottom, and then you have a floating candle on the top. And I'm not even kidding you guys, I died. Like, I was like, okay, that is it. We are literally changing every single thing about the wedding, and that is exactly what I want from here on out. So it's one of those things where even though you think you really love one thing, you might end up falling in love with something else. And so I recommend just looking at decor on Pinterest kind of early, if you can, because there's just so much out there. And there's so many different themes that you could go with. Or if you don't want a theme, you could just go with something, that is more of like a color palette. And then you can kind of throw in a couple of different things here and there that are still within the same color palette. So yeah, that is it. That's all I have for you guys. I really hope that this was helpful for a lot of you out there who are planning your wedding on your own. I know that for me, honestly, like, it's just been such an adventurous process. There have been so many things that, like, I just didn't even know existed. And thank God for my mother-in-law, because she's like all about this kind of stuff. And so when we were talking about invitations and things like that, I'm like, oh, we need that? Okay, that's cool. So it's just a really really cool process, and I just highly recommend, don't let yourself get too stressed about this. This is your wedding. Have fun. Let the planning be fun. Let it be a really good time, because this is something you're going to remember for the rest of your life. And I promise you don't want to look back and be like, oh my God, I was such a stressed and hot mess. Like, no, you just want it to be a fun and fulfilling process. So I really hope that you guys enjoyed this video, and I wish you luck in your wedding planning. All right, well, I will see you guys next time. Bye.